we're joined by one of the men at the front line of the current migrant crisis. It is Croatia's Prime Minister, Zoran Milanovic. Thanks so much for your time, Mr. Milanovic. Now, you are a social democrat, has been very outspoken on the migrant issue, often to the ire of Hungarian and Serbian neighbours. A very good day to you. Now, since Hungary closed its borders with Serbia last week, we've seen a lot of migrants move to and through Croatia. You wanted to keep those borders open and let people through.
Well, good day in the first place. This is a matter of terminology because actually Hungary has not closed her border. They sealed it by the barbed wire, but the border crossing, international border crossings have not been closed technically. So we've seen some people traversing those border posts in the aftermath of the completion of that infamous wall. The problem, though, is with the fact that Serbia is transferring or pointing all the migrants towards Croatian border, and it's since we are accommodating them and accepting them in a very orderly fashion, if you will, military one, but with all the positive aspects of military, devoid of any negative, so without arms. And we organize them into camps and tents, and we feed them, and we give them water and medical assistance. And then they're being transferred and dispersed onto numerous border crossings towards the European Union, because that's something that they're literally craving for. You cannot stop them there.
At the same time, you've had to close most of your border with Serbia. Is that going to reopen anytime soon?
The reason we did that temporarily, even though Serbia issued, what do they call that, ultimatum?
Indeed.
It smacks of, you know, post-World War I. That's not a language we use. And by the way, you cannot issue ultimatum to Croatia. There is no Croatia in that sense. It's European Union. You cannot wage trade war on Croatia. It's either all or none. My message is clear. Unless and until I see that at least some people, initially as a gesture of goodwill, are traveling north to that infamous wall and border crossing with Hungary, we're gonna repeat that, because that's indecent, that's not sincere. People are entering Serbia, something I never complained about, you know, envisaging this development of the situation, but then they are taken north by the entrepreneurs, you know, small pickpocketers, whatever you call them. Somebody makes money on that. It became routine. It's not literally human trafficking, but it is a source of grey economy.
Indeed, and
big time. So my message was, and my offer to the Serbian Prime Minister, well, if you need 100 buses, we're going to send it south, and we're going to cooperate with you and make sure that people travel across Serbia in an orderly fashion, that they do not spontaneously congregate in Belgrade, and they are, you know, with a tongue in cheek, taken to the Croatian border. Take some to the north. That's my message, and it can be done.
Because there's quite some problems on the north. There's a couple of Croatian camps that we're hearing have food shortages. A lot of reporters.
No. Come on.
What are conditions like? Because it is an incredible amount of people arriving.
8,000 people entered yesterday. You know, it brings back memories of June this year, when Prime Minister of Hungary rejected any participation in any quota, because he, I quote, has been, you know, overwhelmed and fed up with the refugees, and he quoted 65,000 entering Hungary since the beginning of the year. So we're talking first 6 months. Now we got 40,000 in 7 days.
Indeed. I believe you said you wanted to try and force Hungary to take some of them as well and send some towards the border.
Eventually they're taking them to Croatia, and Slovenia is taking them as well. But you know, the funny part is that the countries which, quote, unquote, suffered the most, which are the countries of final desire, final destination, complain the least. I mean, I've been in permanent conversation with Austrian Prime Minister, and it works fine.
Because the idea isn't to register the migrants in Croatia, it's to let them walk through.
No, actually, the idea is to register them in Greece, which is Schengen country, but apparently not good enough for migrants. Okay, I can grasp that as a human being, you know, but then we can go further east and ask ourselves why Turkey lets people trickle down from the camps to the Greek islands, which are, you know, swimming distance at some points from Turkish coast. Why they decline to register them at all? They transfer them, thus incurring more difficulty and making it more cumbersome to Greece. And then they travel north via Macedonia. In Serbia, they enter at will, and they travel without any control. I tell you, it's a business activity.
Brussels has been talking about setting up these hot spots, specific countries that would deal with that registering of people arriving, making sure who's a genuine asylum seeker fleeing for safety, who else is maybe an economic refugee. Okay. Would Croatia be willing to be one of those?
But, you know, when you mention hot spot, because currently in Croatia we have like 3,000 people at this moment, maybe less. And I know exactly how many people boarded ferries on the Greek islands at Lesbos and are traveling to the Greek mainland and are expected to come in Croatia in 36, 48 hours. So when you say hotspot, actually you are suggesting, you are creating a logical corollary of the continuation of the flight of the people. Mm-hmm. So why not stop soon? 200,000 people out of reported 2 million from Turkey have made it so far. Let's talk to Turkey. Let's give them a lot of money. Let's wait until Turkish elections, because this has much to do with elections in Turkey, are over. And let's pay some respect to the people with whom we sometimes disagree. But we're NATO allies, aren't we? So
you think
Turkey should be engaged more.
Is to keep people closer, I guess. Most of these refugees are fleeing from the Syrian war. The idea is to keep them more over there, but doesn't the European Union have a responsibility to welcome people fleeing for their lives?
But once they fled, they came to the safe haven, which is Turkey.
At the same time, Turkey has already over 2 million people. It's, you know, we're a population in the European Union of 508 million people.
Let me tell you something. What I told the European Council. I mean, I can make it public because I made it anyway afterwards, after that council. Croatia back in 93, 92, we were a refugee country. We were a country of the internally displaced people, of refugees, of the people who were expelled from their homes with a very meager small property in an island sacks. Italy, Austria, Germany didn't think of closing border to Croatian citizens. As a matter of fact, they opened them wide. But most of the people, due to the different circumstances of the homeland war and different expectations, opted for staying close home in Croatia in dire circumstances, you know, in their hotel resorts, which as a consequence didn't work and didn't make money for years until the country was liberated. So every country, every conflict has its own narrative, its own psychology. The psychology of this conflict is that the people are so much frustrated, disenchanted, scared, that they opted to leave their country for good. Yeah. I'm not here to judge. So, but once they come in Turkey, it's a safe country.
Yeah, but they're risking
money. It's money, so it should be paid for Turkey. It should be made much easier for them, because look, Croatia accommodated thousands of people, not only from Croatia, from Bosnia, Croatian Catholic, but also Bosniak Muslim.
Well, after much weeks of debate, Brussels finally got their member states to agree to the relocation of 120,000 refugees already inside the European Union. Let's take a close look at the details of that decision.
An excellent summit. Those were the words of EU Council President Donald Tusk. He said European leaders managed to put their differences aside in dealing with the migrant crisis. One measure aims to stem the flow at the source.
Leaders have agreed on increased help to Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey and other countries in the region. At least additional €1 billion will be mobilized for help to the refugees in the region via the UNHCR and the World Food Programme.
There are over 4 million Syrians living in neighboring countries where increasingly dire conditions have contributed to a surge in the number of refugees trying to gain asylum in Europe. For those that continue to arrive on the EU shores, there will be so-called hotspots operating by the end of November. These are reception centers in frontline states like Greece and Italy, where EU officials will sort refugees from economic migrants. Those ineligible for protection will be sent back.
This means we combine together hotspots, relocation and returns. This is very important for us because for the first time the migrant question is not simply a question of the single member states.
Italy has long pushed for support in processing its huge influx of arrivals and was the first to propose redistributing refugees across EU member states. That move was agreed to on Tuesday, despite strong objections from Eastern European countries.
But after many weeks of political wrangling, countries finally accepted the relocation of 120,000 refugees already in the country. Croatia taking less than 600.
No, but it's a second-tier question, and may I remind that at the start of this discussion back in the late spring, my country was among those who didn't, challenge the Commission's right to impose quote-unquote quotas. I was not among those who were, stiff, kind of closed. So I said, hit me with number, make it reasonable. Don't make me suffer. Don't make it that I have to explain too much back in my country, because my country and my people, if I may be so, pretentious to say my people, I mean, Croatian citizens, are not negatively disposed, to say the least. People are never, by definition, intuitively, favorably disposed.
But could perhaps take more, or
we could take more. We could take, but I will not. This will not be an auction, because we're talking people, not potatoes.
And it should be done on that European level.
But it is totally, irrelevant discussion at this point. Yes, let Commission decide.
Now,
let Commission tell, be it 3,000. Let's make those people accept the fact that they have to stay in Hungary, in Croatia, in Czech Republic instead of Germany, Denmark, or Sweden. It's going to be hard in the first place. It's not going to be easy. But before we tackle the issue at a source, we engage Turkey and Greece, because let's not forget, Greece is a member of Schengen. It all starts there. I cannot accept the fact that the country of that size, of that tradition, a maritime country, naval country, does not have a coast guard. I mean, it looks like they couldn't care less.
Well, one thing we saw, and going back to just the 120,000, which is really a drop in the ocean, according to UNHCR figures, there's that many people arriving every week. The consensus, we didn't get a full consensus in Brussels, even on the relocation of that amount of people. Do you think that was a mistake? Do you think Brussels should have held out to get everybody on board? We saw 4 countries, all in the East, really against any kind of quota system or relocation of people.
Oh, I will not be lambasting, these 4 countries. I may limit myself to the statement that I'm happy that all of a sudden Poland is not among them.
But one of the things we saw a sharp divide really between East and Western Europe in this migrant debate. Is it a case of former communist countries?
It's a psychological issue. My country was light communist country, but it was communist. Let's not forget, it was not democratic. It was autocratic. We had no free elections until 1990. But then again, very different from the Soviet bloc. So we were never fenced in. We are a maritime nation, probably and historically the only genuinely maritime Slavic nation, Slavic by terms of language. So that all adds a bit, and the people are not.
Can you understand other countries' reluctance? And notably, more and more, like Slovakia's prime minister saying, really, if they were going to take any refugees, it couldn't be Muslims. It had to be people that had a closer culture to Slovakia. Do you think that's acceptable? Is that something that...
I'm coming from the nation which is, now it's an advertise, which is among the small nations, and we are 4.3 million citizens. Probably by far, the most diversified nation as a political community, as a historical narrative, among all European nations. Poles, which are 40, face such regional, geographic, cultural differences, but it's a huge country. Croatian North, Croatian South, in terms of, history, being under Venice, so the very potent master from whom you have learned a lot, Ottomans or Austrians, that's how we lived for centuries. And it affects even these days, our life, our culture,
so Croatia,
our openness.
Indeed, Croatia open then as you see it. Do you think, however, there should be any reaction from Brussels to statements from Robert Fico, Slovakia's Prime Minister, really coming out quite firm on who he will accept and who he won't, and bringing it down on the basis of religion?
Oh, that's what I said years ago. You cannot accept people on the basis of the color of iris or retina, skin complexion. It's ridiculous. We are good colleagues, but then again, he knows better. Who am I to judge?
Now,
that's not my world, so I don't need anybody of them to protect me from Islam. Islam gave us a lot. They're thinkers. Al-Tusi from Persia, he knew it better, centuries before Herbert Spencer. Darwin about evolution, and the first Marx and the first traits of evolution. Without them, we probably would have never learned about Aristotle. So we're the same flock.
You don't expect Europe to, because in the clause of the agreement signed for the relocation, they did say they would take cultural, social ties, family all into account. Is that not opening the door for countries to pick and choose the refugees they're willing to take in?
I think it's nasty. It would be nasty, yeah. To pick on which basis? Blondes? There are no blonde people there. And that's not an advantage.
Is that not what's happening on a state level?
Not in Croatia. Not in Croatia. Okay. I mean, again, I think you can trace my inner feeling about that, but let's stop here.
Very last question. Croatia joined the European Union back in 2013. Are you happy with how it's being part of that union?
I'm kind of conservative when it comes to the ever closer union. I think it's been close enough. I think Commission should not be granted more powers because those people do not get elected. I'm along the lines of, but I'm not Eurosceptic. So I don't see it. No, it's not. I mean, I don't see it growing any further because, look, I'm going for the elections in a month. Whom should I be responsible to? To bureaucrats or to the people? Because the people are sovereign. I mean, that's fundamental question. But in terms of opportunities, it's better. We've been very successful in attracting European funds, in allocating them. And finally, we caught up some growth, which is not only, it's systemic growth. So it's along the whole front. It's exports. We've been the third country in the last 2 quarters in Europe in terms of the quarterly export growth, 11%. So we've been very good at services, but again, we are rejuvenating the tradition of making things and selling them abroad. So
you can see the advantages.
It was worth it, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Zoran Milanovic, thank you so much for your time.